The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
DJ Baller, you killed this.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to College Football Coast to Coast. It is week 6, the preview of the college football season here in 2023. Halfway point of the season here, and halfway through the season, and a lot has happened, and a lot more is yet to happen, and we will talk about it right here, right now. Opening with the AP top 10 and top 25 risers and fallers. In the top 10, not much movement there. 10 has really been, the top 10 has stayed where it is for the most part. So we'll leave it as is there. You can see it on the screen there for the live show. And if not, you guys can go and look at it. Nothing's really changed. You can take our word for it on that one. So moving into the risers and fallers. Tyler, I'll let you take your faller first, man, and we'll go right into it here as we get ready for this week 6 slate.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it to my team. Give it to the LSU Tigers. Very embarrassing performance, especially on one side of the football. On the defensive side, lost 55-49. You would think that many times that you would be scoring 49 points, especially on the road in the SEC, that you would win by double digits, but that wasn't the case on Saturday night, as LSU was a team, if you remember in the preseason, this was a top 5 team. They lost to Florida State. They were still hovering around they went all the way down to number 14, got a couple of wins against Mississippi State, Grambling, and then they in Arkansas too, and they hovered around number 12 and number 13, and then they fell 10 spots to number 23. And honestly, I don't think they're even deserving of that number 23. I think that there's some teams, Maryland is definitely one of those teams. They're 5-0 if they take care of business today against Ohio State. I could definitely see them vaulting up. But there's definitely other teams that are undefeated and that are 4-1. But I just think that LSU is right there at 23 just because that they wanted to have a top 25 matchup against Missouri. But yeah, definitely not the season that I really had in mind for LSU. I thought that this would be at least a 10-2 team. It could definitely happen, but they would have to take care of Alabama and Texas A&M at the end of the season, and that is definitely looking challenging. So I think LSU's offense is definitely one of the best in the country, but man, that defense is downright terrible. So LSU is my fallers, especially falling 10 spots in this week's AP poll.
Yeah, 10 spots is a lot, for an LSU team that had a really bright future ahead of them in this past offseason. So, 10 spots is a long ways to fall down all the way to 23. For me, I'm going to go to the number 10 team, or what was the number 10 team in the country this past week, and that is the Utah Utes in their abysmal loss on the road at Oregon State. Don't count Oregon State out. They're a quality football team, a very good football team, and they made Utah look silly this past weekend. So, it's one of those where I was I knew it was a trap game, and this is one of those where, Cam Rising's not healthy. You're playing backup quarterback in this situation, looks like they are the whole season. So in this situation, you lose 21-7, but it's a lot worse than that. I mean, your touchdown at the end of the game was a pity touchdown. Let's be real. You scored a touchdown with 6 minutes left in the game, while Oregon State basically ran the show on you all night. So Oregon State, very good football team. As far as Utah, they fall 8 spots all the way to 18. I mean, that's a big hit for them, and you can count them out of the Pac-12 at this point. At the rate things are going, if they're 4-1 now, and at this point in the season, with the teams that are ahead of them, USC, Oregon State, and now Oregon, who's really quality football team, they're on the outside looking in, and that's not good for a Utah team that we've seen repeatedly be back in the Pac-12 championship. And it looks like they could not be a part of it in the last stint of the Pac-12. Who's your riser, Tyler?
I'm going to stay in the Pac-12. I'm actually going to stay in that game. I'm going to go for Oregon State's Beavers. If you've been a fan on this show, Jacob and I were very high, really been high on Oregon State since last year, especially now with DJU. I think that DJU is looking very good. That offense is just rolling on all cylinders. I think that defense is definitely a very good compliment. And like you mentioned, the Pac-12 is very loaded. You have Washington and USC at the top. Washington survived a road test against Arizona. Now Arizona has to face off against USC in the LA Coliseum today. So we'll see if USC can pass that challenge. I think that we both know that their defense isn't quite capable or good enough to win this conference, but we'll see. Oregon State with their one loss, being in Washington State, a very good Washington State team. Washington State will be tested today when they hit the road against UCLA. But I'm going to give my risers to Oregon State. They're sitting at 4-1, sitting at that number 15 spot after that big victory against Utah. That was definitely a huge win, a big boost of confidence. They needed that, especially after falling against Washington State. Look at their schedule. It doesn't get much. It gets a lot tougher moving forward. But I think that this is a team that is challenged and ready to take charge. Even with the one loss in the Pac-12, I think that this is still a team that could definitely be a dark horse team.
Yeah, for me, to my riser here, I'm going to stay in the Pac-12 also.
Okay.
I think this team, undefeated at this point, they moved up a tremendous amount of spots. They moved 8 spots in 2 weeks and have only played one time. So, a bye week, and now you're getting ready to go in a situation where you play today and it's a big game. You're on the road at UCLA. I'm going with Wazoo, Washington State. That team is just an absolute dark horse team. And they could find themselves in the top 10. They would have the most teams conference-wise in the top 10. And it's one of those situations where it could be anybody's ball game at that point. They still have to play Oregon. They're yet to play a team in UCLA that has one loss but could be a ranked football team. And they have a lot left on the schedule that they have to win games. But if they win those games, they could find themselves in the Pac-12 championship. The door is wide open in the Pac-12, I think the most out of any conference, and you can't count this team out. They are a really good football team. They were ranked 21 when they played Oregon State 2 weeks ago and ended up beating them by 3. They were playing at Washington State. They were 21 and Oregon State was 14, and they absolutely went on and won a game that meant a lot in that scenario, considering Oregon State took down Utah last week. So I'm very interested to see how this team turns out. They are on the up. It says they only moved up 3 spots, but 5 the week before, so really 8 spots. I mean, you go from 21 to 13 pretty quickly, and that's a huge jump for a team that is one of those where it's confusing to see where they're at program-wise. Like Pat McAfee talked about it the other day about how, that team really doesn't know if they're going to be a part of anything anymore after this year. They've been a Pac-12 team forever. Where are they going to go? They're not going to the Big 12 as far as we know. Their next stop is a Group of 5 school. Like, really, they could turn into a Mountain West school pretty quickly. So it's definitely a big year for them. And I know that for this program, they have skyrocketed over the last few years. So we could see them move to a group of 5 or somebody else in the Power 5 pick them up. But it could be very interesting to see what Washington State's future is ahead. Moving away from our risers and fallers into our games of the week. Games of the week for today's games. This is a big one here. Notre Dame. They're going to go on the road to Louisville. This is a. I wish we had a siren on our show. It was just like woo 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 because like this feels like an automatic trap game for Notre Dame, who struggled last week against Duke. A couple things don't go that way. If Sam Hartman doesn't get out for that huge run, this game's over. Like, I mean, Duke could have won that game last week, and Notre Dame could be well outside of the top 10, if it went the other way. So this game is a lot, means a lot here for the ACC, for Louisville. I mean, for Notre Dame, who's unranked but ostensibly is playing an ACC schedule, or not unranked, not in a conference, but isn't. They're playing an ACC schedule basically. So this game is big for Louisville because they've snuck into the top 25 now as an unranked team before. They're undefeated. They're 5-0. They're a good football team. And I think they can honestly give Notre Dame a run for their money, especially being at home. It could be interesting to see Notre Dame go on the road back-to-back weeks and have to win some tough football games against some ranked teams. So, look, I'm that crazy. I'm going to pick Louisville to win this game. I'm going to go. Let's go 33-30. I think Louisville can score the football enough on Notre Dame. And what I've seen so far this season from that team, they have no problem putting the ball in the end zone. So it's going to be a tough test for Notre Dame's defense.
Yeah, I think they're going to get tested again. Louisville's offense is pretty good. Scott Satterfield is doing a very good job. Louisville, look at their schedule. You could say that they haven't been tested. This is probably their first true test. Notre Dame, they've already been tested against Ohio State and then against a very solid Duke team. And like you mentioned, it wasn't for that Sam Hartman fourth down conversion run. Notre Dame would be sitting at 2 losses in the conversation. We probably wouldn't even be talking about this game here in the ACC, but we are. It's a top 25 matchup. Notre Dame once again has to go on the road to ACC school. They've had success recently. Their last loss to an ACC school was back in 2017 against Miami. So it's been a very long time. Obviously they spent the 2020 COVID season in the ACC, but outside of that, that was their last loss. But I think that this Notre Dame defense is going to be able to really handled Louisville's offense. That's really been humming on all cylinders. I just don't think that Louisville has been tested by a defense of Notre Dame's. But the main key that I have for Notre Dame, the past couple of weeks, they haven't been able to get their running game going. Audric Estime, he got that big touchdown run to really seal the game for the Fighting Irish against Duke last week. But he's got to do it consistently for 4 quarters. Sam Hartman, he's been able to use his legs in the past couple of weeks to really beat you. So I think that this Notre Dame team is just tested, and they're coming off of a win, but it really feels like a loss for them. So I think they're going to be ready and motivated to go. I do think that Louisville is also going to be ready. That home crowd is definitely going to feed into this environment. This is 2 teams that, hey, say if Louisville wins this one, I think that the rest of their schedule really sets up nicely for them in the ACC. And Notre Dame, if they win this one, I think that their college football playoff hopes really depend on that USC matchup. And if they win that, I think that, the rest of their schedule really sets up nicely for them. So this is a very important game here, ACC versus the non-conference school and independent of Notre Dame. But I'm going to go with the road team of Notre Dame. I just feel like they are just better and talented on paper. So I do think that this is going to be a close game. I do think that Louisville can cover this 6.5 just because it's at home. I think that their offense can really play into this game. But I am going to go Notre Dame winning this one 31-27 over the Cardinal.
Yeah, I mean, if the Birds win this game, let's think about this. If they win this game, they have a gauntlet coming up. Like, let's be real. Like, in 2 weeks, you've got to defend home turf again against Duke. Duke's a 1-loss team, but they might as well be an undefeated team right now. Then later on in the season, you finish up with on the road, against a Miami team who you brought up for a second, who's 17th in the country. Like, talk about out of nowhere type thing. Miami's 4-0 right now in the season, sitting at 17. That's going to be a tough test to go on the road and beat them. Then you got to come home and play against a Kentucky team who looks really good right now. So they've got a tough schedule here at the end of the season. So they're, no time to slouch over right now if you're Louisville. So I expect them to put up a fight today in this game, and I hope they can keep it close. I mean, keep it interesting with Notre Dame. That's what's going to catch the committee by surprise, and keep them on their toes when it comes time to decide for this college football playoff. Can you keep it close with Notre Dame, or can you beat them? So it definitely will be a strategy game in this one. So moving away from this one, we're going to the Red River rivalry game here, the Big 12 game of the week. Number 12, the Oklahoma Sooners and the number 3 Texas Longhorns facing off in that old neutral site game we see every year. Texas opens as the 5-point favorite here. And Tyler, I want to get your thoughts on this game. First of all, it's Oklahoma's offense. We've seen a completely different team from last year to this season so far. Is this game a turning point for Oklahoma in a boost, or does Texas's defense step up and show that they really are the number 3 ranked team in the country?
I think that this is only going to be the first of 2 matchups here. I feel like this is going to be the 2 teams that you're also going to see in Arlington. I picked this game in the preseason. I do think, going back to last year's matchup, it was a 49-0 Texas victory. I do think that this is a much improved Oklahoma offense. If you've seen them, they put up 66 points in 2 of their games, and then they really struggled also the offense. In the Cincinnati game, they only scored 20, and then at the SMU game, they won 28-11 to barely cover in that game. So it's been an up and down, but I do think that their offense is going to have to play. Dylan Gabriel is pretty much going to have to play flawless, because this is a Texas defense that is one of the best in the country. I think that a lot of people have just put Texas to the side a little bit after their Alabama victory, but I mean, they just absolutely dismantled a very good Kansas team. I know that Jalen Daniels got hurt. We saw our boy, Mr. Bean, get into the game. He had a phenomenal game, but it was just Texas's defense just swarming him. So I think this is a big game for Texas. I feel like if they win this one, this is going to be an undefeated team. They're going to be locked in the college football playoff. I do think that this game will be a lot closer than last year. I think that Oklahoma's defense just wasn't really ready for the challenge of Quinn Ewers. I think that this year against Quinn Ewers, Quinn Ewers has been playing like a Heisman Trophy candidate. He has the guys on the outside with Adonai Mitchell. And then, like I mentioned, the defense is just going to be swarming. So I do think that Oklahoma will play them close, but not close enough. I think that Texas overall is just a better football team. They're going to prove it with a statement victory. I think the Longhorns cover, and I think it's going to be a double-digit victory. I think that Texas gets into the high 30s. So give me the Longhorns to win this one 38-27 against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game where, I go back and look throughout the season here to see kind of what's happened. I mean, Oklahoma hasn't given up more than 20 points this season in a game. Granted, they have not played a ranked football team all year. They opened the season against Arkansas State. They beat the brakes off of them. SMU at home again. They beat them by 17. Go on the road to Tulsa, and you basically Tulsa was basically a bunch of tumbleweeds. And home, we go on the road again against Cincinnati in a game that you won by 2 touchdowns, and come back home and you beat Iowa State. How Iowa State scores 20 points on you, I don't know, but you beat them by 30. So this game, I don't think anybody really knows where Oklahoma's at. And I think it's more about where Texas is than where Oklahoma is at right now. Texas is a really good football team, and it's just a situation where it's like just a it's just a strange match right now in the season. 5 is, I think, just a pity 5 because I don't think we know where we're at with both teams. So this is going to be a good football game on ABC. 11 a.m. kickoff today. I'm very interested to see what happens here and who wins this game. And got some heavy hitters on the coaching staffs, and this could be a heck of a football game and one of the best ones of the day and of the weekend. Moving away from this one and into our Big Ten game of the week, it is the Maryland Terrapins, which most people don't even know that they're the Terrapins, which is pretty bad. The Maryland Terrapins are going on the road to number 4 Ohio State. Ohio State is the 19.5 point favorite at home in Columbus. Newsflash, people, Maryland's a very good football team. And 19.5, I think, is way too much in this football game. They're giving Ohio State too much credit, I think, right now, this early in the season. Yeah, okay, they barely beat Notre Dame, who barely beat Duke last week. So I don't know. It's just one of those where everyone's like, well, Ohio State's a lock for the college football playoff. I don't think they're a lock for the college football playoff. And there's some people that think they could be the number one team in the country, and there's no chance that they could be the number one team in the country because they don't look like the number one team in the country. Nor does the number one team in the country. Georgia doesn't look like they're the best team in the country either. So it's a game for me where if Maryland can score the football, I think they can win this football game. Defensively, I just don't think they're going to be able to hold up against Ohio State. Offensively, though, I think they could win the battle. Just score points. That's all you got to do. And that's no problem for Maryland. I mean, they score points like no tomorrow. So I definitely think this game could be really close. I'm going to take Maryland to cover the 19.5 because I think Ohio State probably could win this game by a touchdown or 10 points. If Maryland scores the football, I think they can put up 28. I think Ohio State could probably put up 38. So I'm going to give them the 38-28 win over Maryland. But I definitely think Maryland is a really good football team. They're 5-0 right now. And heck, I wouldn't be shocked if they're 6-0 after today if they get this big win.
It would definitely be a big win. It would shake up the Big Ten East race, with Penn State being on the bye week. Ohio State is coming off of the bye week. So I think that, coming off of the bye week is definitely more assuring if you're an Ohio State fan. It would definitely be a different story if you had to play Maryland after that physical game against Notre Dame, because I think that if this game was played at the Notre Dame game, I probably would pick Maryland to win this one outright. But recent history has told us that this Maryland team has played this Ohio State team close, and Ohio State does have better teams, with CJ Stroud, and in the past couple of years. So I think that this Ohio State offense, they really haven't touched their ceiling. I think that the Notre Dame game, that was a physical defensive battle. We saw McCord with that game-winning touchdown drive, but outside of that, the one game that we really point to is against Western Kentucky. They put up 66 points in that one. So we haven't really seen that type of level of offense. Marvin Harrison Jr., I hate to say that he's having a down year. It's not the year that we were hoping for. He's not really in the Heisman discussion race. But I tell you what, Maryland, if you look at their schedule, none of their games have been close. So this is really a team that hasn't really played a close game. They just blew the doors off of Indiana 44-17. So I think that Talia Tagovailoa, he has the experience. I just think that the main issue for him is that he cannot force any turnovers, because you cannot give this Ohio State offense of the short field. You got to make them earn it. Like you mentioned, I do think that Maryland's defense will be tested against Ohio State's offense. I think that Ohio State is going to want to run the football more to take the pressure off of Kyle McCord. So I think I agree with you. I think that Maryland is a good enough football team to cover this 19.5. That is just way too much for a conference game. I think that Maryland, you look at them at 5-0. Ohio State at 4-0. I think that this is early on. Whoever wins this one is definitely going to be right there in the mix with Penn State and Michigan in the Big Ten East race. So I think that Ohio State ultimately wins this one, but I think that Maryland gives them a game and makes them sweat it out all the way to the fourth quarter. So give me the Buckeyes to win this one 35-23.
Yeah, you make a good point. Talia, believe it or not, he's thrown it 169 times this season. He's 111 for 169 this season. He's thrown for over 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. So they sling the rock. So I wouldn't be surprised if they start slinging the rock early, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have the lead at half. So I'm definitely interested in this game. This will be a fantastic football game to start the day today at 11 a.m. Getting away from the Big Ten and over to the Pac-12, and one member that's going to be in the Big Ten next year, and one that who knows where they're going to be. Number 13, Washington State. They're going on the road to UCLA. UCLA is the 3.5-point favorite at home. Newsflash, people. Washington State is a very good football team, as I stated earlier. I think Washington State can win this game outright on the road. I'll keep it short and sweet. I've already talked about this game for a couple minutes, so I think that Washington State gets the win here. I think that they show that they belong in the top 15 and potentially in the top 10 after a good quality one on the road.
Yeah, very important game here for Washington State. I feel like we've been saying that for every game, but I feel like whenever we get into now the month of October, we're 1 month out from finding whoever's in the inaugural college football playoff for this playoff rankings for this season. And I think, Washington State, you look at them, they are just slowly climbing up these rankings at number 13. They're 4-0. We all know at the end of the season, they face off against Washington in the Apple Cup, but they do have some trap games in there in between. So I think this is a big game for Washington State. UCLA, I think that a lot of people have really buried this team just after that 14-7. Their offense didn't really look too good, and their offense was supposed to be their strong suit. Even with DTR leaving them, their running back, Zach Charbonnet, they have a freshman, Dante Moore. I think that Dante Moore, he's had his ups and downs, but that's just what a freshman quarterback is going to give you. I do think that there's one good thing about this game. There's going to be a lot of points. If you like offense, definitely watch this game. Cam Ward, I think that he's not getting the Heisman discussion that he needs to be talking about. I think that he's not right up there along with Michael Penix. It's pretty much Michael Penix and everyone else right now. But I think that Cam Ward, with a very good game and a very good victory against UCLA, could get into that, but not so fast. I'm going to go with an upset here. I think that UCLA at home in front of their home crowd, I think that this is going to be a high-scoring game. I'm going to go ahead and say that UCLA wins this one. It's going to be squeaking out a victory, 1-point victory, 36-35 against Washington State. I do like Washington State's team, but I think that they're definitely more vulnerable going on the road to UCLA. I think that UCLA is just in search of that big victory. So I think that they get it here in week number 6 and knock off number 13 Washington State to create some chaos in the Pac-12 in the final year of this amazing conference.
Yeah, you make a good point talking about Cameron Ward for a second. First of all, he's almost to 1,400 yards this season. He's got 13 touchdowns and hasn't thrown an interception yet this season. His QBR puts him in the top 10 for quarterbacks in the country this season. So think about that. He sits at number 8 in the country as far as quarterbacks. He is a junior, and he's likely probably to come back next year, to Washington State. So, a lot of upside there that they've hit the nail on the head as far as quarterback goes. They have a leader on offense, and the future looks bright for this team, whatever it is and wherever they go. So definitely a really good football team. UCLA, it's weird to see how well they'll battle back after what they lost, in the previous year. So I'm definitely interested to see how this game goes. But it could go either way, like you mentioned. Getting away from this one to the SEC game of the week here, the number 11 Alabama Crimson Tide are headed to College Station as the 2-point favorite over the A&M Aggies. Texas A&M right now is kind of floating around there in the SEC. Not much going on with them. All's quiet for the most part. Alabama, lots going on lately. A lot has been going on. They are the 2-point favorite. Let me tell you what, I'm interested to see how this plays out because A&M has Alabama's number in College Station. And I think it's not far-fetched to say that I believe that A&M can win this game outright. And they could probably cover the other direction. So, yeah, I'll take A&M. I honestly think A&M can win this football game. If their defense steps up, I think they can hold Alabama to 21. So I'll give A&M the 24-21 victory at home. A tough place to play at Kyle Field. So I definitely think that they have a lot of upside, especially this game being at home. Other way around, if they're playing in Tuscaloosa, then I probably end up taking Alabama. But them being at home is a huge advantage in this game.
Yeah, huge advantage playing in front of 110,000 people in Kyle Field. Going back to last year's game, Jalen Milroe was in this game. Bryce Young, this was one of his contests that he was injured. So we saw Jalen Milroe, and Texas A&M almost pulled off the upset, but Alabama won last year's contest 24-20. This year's quarterback battle is Jalen Milroe and Max Johnson, with Connor Weigman being out for the season. Max Johnson, though, has looked very good. I think that this offense with Bobby Petrino, that was definitely the right call for Jimbo Fisher to go after an offense coordinator to change up this offensive scheme. I think it's definitely been working. The defense, they had their slow start to the season, the one loss to Miami. But I think, Miami is going to be a very good team in the ACC. I think that it's Florida State's to run away with, but it would not surprise me if Miami is that number 2 team in the ACC and we see Florida State versus Miami in the ACC championship. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad loss. I think that their defense is slowly starting to improve. They're able to shut down Arkansas's offense and their running game with Raheem Sanders. They're going to have to do the same because Alabama has Jason McClellan. I think that Alabama is going to run the football. Jalen Milroe really didn't even throw the football against Mississippi State. He ran for so many yardage against Mississippi State's defense. I do expect this is going to be a defensive battle. Texas A&M, I definitely think that they could definitely be one of those teams that can run away with this SEC West. I think the winner of this game will ultimately take that division this year, the way that LSU's been falling. I think that Ole Miss already have that one loss against Alabama and Texas A&M left on the schedule. I am going to go with Alabama in this one. I do think that Jalen Milroe has definitely hit his stride. I think that it's been some early struggles with him. In the Texas game, he had some struggles. But I definitely think that he's starting to figure it out. And this Alabama defense, I think, will create a timely turnover to win this game very, very closely. This is not going to be a blowout. I think this is going to be a game that's going to come down to the wire. So I think that Alabama wins this one 24-23, an ultimate nail biter in College Station.
Yeah, well, you can't get any closer than that in football. No half points given out there. But this is the most exciting game on the schedule. I think this is the most exciting game for today's games, a night game tonight. So number 24, Fresno State. Now this team here has a bunch of dogs on their team. They are the 5.5 point favorite on the road at Wyoming. It could snow, it could rain, it could be hailing. Who knows what could go on in Wyoming? I don't know if anybody knows what's going on in Wyoming other than the folks that live in Wyoming. The Mountain West is like one of my favorite conferences in the group of 5 outside of the Sun Belt, although the Sun Belt has screwed us on the betting side of things the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I think the Mountain West is so fun and exciting. Like this is the conference that Washington State belongs in right here. And it's fun to watch. It's fun football to watch because you just never know what can happen. And Fresno State being 24, if they win this game on the road, they could be at 20. So who knows what could happen? It's very interesting to see a Fresno State team that, has a history of playing well and being that team to stay somewhere in the top 25, never get a bid for the college football playoff. Who knows, next year with the 12-team playoff, we could see them. We could. I mean, you never know what could happen. So the Cowboys in this one, big win against Texas Tech means a lot. They're 4-1 right now in a really good football team. Think about this. They're 4-1, but they're 4th in the conference. How are you 4-1 and 4th in a football conference? And Fresno State is 5-0. They lead the conference. It's just a weird conference, dude. And anything can happen. I mean, think about it. Boise State, UNLV, Utah State, Nevada, Fresno State, Wyoming. I mean, you name it, they got it. San Jose State, New Mexico. It's crazy teams, and it's fun football. So I think this one here is battle of offense for the most part. Defensively, I think Fresno State is the better football team at the end of the day. Who can score the most points? I think it's Fresno State. I think they can honestly win this game by more than 5.5. I think they probably win this game by 14. So I think they can put up a lot of points. So I'm going to go 38 to 24. it just seems like they can run away in the second half with this one. They're so much quicker on offense, and Wyoming kind of runs that pro style offense. Just San Jose or Fresno State. I'm sorry, Fresno State just moves the football so fast, and they look really good.
Yeah, this is going to be a very exciting matchup. I feel like, Fresno State is just pumping out these good quarterbacks. Jake Haener, he's gone to the NFL, and then Mikey Keene, sophomore quarterback, he's just been an absolute dog for Fresno State. So I think, Wyoming, this has been a team that's been featured a lot on the show. We picked them in the Texas Tech and Wyoming game, and then we picked them again whenever they faced another conference battle. They ended up winning that one against Nevada. Fresno State, I think that one of their main key victories is against Purdue. They were able to beat a Purdue team that came into the season with a lot of question marks. But if you really look at this matchup, this is also a key matchup in the Mountain West. You look at the standings, Air Force, they're 3-0 in the conference standings. They're feeling like, and, things in the Mountain West right now. So this could be potentially, whoever wins this game could move on and face Air Force in that Mountain West Conference Championship, since the Mountain West no longer has divisions. It's just the top two teams. So I do think that there is going to be some offense, but I do agree with you that Fresno State has the edge on defense. You never know what you're going to get with a trip to Wyoming and Laramie, Wyoming. It's definitely a hostile environment. But I think that Fresno State is a team that's going to be able to pass that environment. I think that Fresno State wins this one by a touchdown. Barely covers this one. If you're betting 5.5, you're probably sweating it out. But I think that Fresno State ends up covering for you. So I think that Fresno State wins this game 34-27, and the Bulldogs take advantage of Wyoming on this road trip. But look out for Air Force. I told you at the beginning of this preseason that Air Force was going to be the team to be the representative for the Mountain West and also go on to a New Year's Six Bowl. Well, that is alive and well right now, boys. So we'll see if it happens, but I think that Fresno State wins this one.
Yeah, Air Force looks like a team that they'll just run you over and they just don't care. Like, they really just don't care. Like, hey, by the way, we're a service academy, but we don't care. We'll just rip your heads off. So, yeah, I mean, I just love watching, like, that game when they played San Jose State. Like, I loved watching the game. How are you losing that game and then you just come in the fourth quarter and absolutely dominate? Like, that is absolute dog mode. So, yeah, you mentioned the line and stuff. So, we are at that point in the show where it's time to talk about those. And it's time to talk about the lines and the best bets for week 6. Some crazy games, some wild ones we've talked about. Tyler, what's your first bet for best bets of the weekend?
Yeah, my first of two bets that we do here on the show is going to be to the Big 12 between UCF and Kansas. UCF coming off of a loss against Kansas State. Kansas coming off of a loss where they hang with Texas for 3 quarters, and then Texas just ran away with it. Jalen Daniels, we'll see if he plays today, or will it be Mr. Bean? I think that UCF is the favorite in this one. They're road favorite, which is definitely surprising to me. But I think that Kansas coming back home to Lawrence in front of their home faithful, I just don't think that this is a team. They're dropped out of the top 25 rankings, but I think they get back on track here in offensive shootout. So give me Kansas to cover the +2 points against the Golden Knights of UCF.
Yeah, I'm gonna go big hitter here. I'm gonna go number 2 Michigan. The Wolverines go on the road to Minnesota, face off against the old Golden Gophers. Michigan's the 20-point favorite on the road. That's a lot of points for a good defensive Minnesota team. And Michigan's had trouble scoring the football this season. Like 20 points, I don't know who's making that up. I think they're a little wild, but I could see like 13, but 20 is a lot. So I'm going to take Minnesota to cover at home. They're a tough team to play at home, and it's a night game there, so it's going to be a big crowd. So for a team that's 3-2, but they're still somehow in the conference talk, like I don't know. The Big Ten West is weird. Like it's got to be the weirdest division in all of football. So Big Ten West is wild. Just a lot of teams that are kind of mediocre teams. So at 3-2, they're not out of it yet, but they could give Michigan a run for their money in this game. So 20 points is a lot for me. Minnesota to cover.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap my bets up. Go to the SEC. Go with a matchup that is always close, but the line is double digits, and that is Ole Miss and Arkansas. Arkansas is a 2-3 team. They're coming off of 3 consecutive losses. They're in a very gauntlet of a schedule right now. Ole Miss coming off of that high physical game against LSU. I think that this is much of a letdown spot. I think that Ole Miss does win, but the 13 line is absolutely insane. This is a series that's been a 52-51 the past couple of years. It's been the 4th and 25 play with the laterals and Arkansas winning in overtime. So this has just been an absolutely insane series for Ole Miss to just absolutely curb stomp them. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that this is going to be an offensive shootout. We've seen both defenses. They can't stop a soul. So I'm going to go with Arkansas, the road team. They're doing a stripe out at the Vaught, but I think that Arkansas, spoils the party a little bit of covers, that plus 13, but I think that the Rebels take care of business.
Yeah, let's stay in the SEC. I got a fun one for you. Tyler's going to hate me for this one, but I got a fun one for you. LSU and Missouri. This game here, LSU is the 5.5-point favorite on the road at Missouri. Missouri is an undefeated football team sitting at ranked 21. It's a 21 versus 23 matchup. I would say the bet here, if you want the cash and you want cash on the barrelhead, I think the way to do it here is to take the Missouri Tigers outright to win this football game. I think that 5.5 is, I think you're doing justice at 5.5. I think that's an okay line. I give you props, Vegas, for the most part. But Missouri at home is a different football team. I mean, they really are. And they can sling the rock. And it's incredible. Like, they have the ultimate air raid offense. Like, it's something to watch. Like, I watched their game against K-State in, like, the worst defeat we've ever had in our lives when it comes to betting. And they just looked crazy down the stretch to go down the field and score like they did. I mean, they put up points like hotcakes. It's pretty impressive to watch. I mean, a team that they haven't scored over 35 this year, but think about it. Their games that they've played have been really good football games. They've kept it close with pretty much everybody. Whether that be a good team, a sucky team, they just grind out wins. And I like that about them. So I think that Missouri at home, they're just a different team, and I think LSU is going to have some problems defensively if Missouri's going to throw the ball the way they have this season.
Yeah, I agree.
So I got an LSU guy to agree with me on a bet.
No, I mean,
this team
if you
on
watch,
a weekend.
If you're a subscriber of our YouTube page, I mean, I picked Missouri across the board in SEC Talk and Bayou Bengal Bites, Sports Scramble, you name it. I'm with Missouri too. I think that
now, Tyler, you do realize there is no NCAA draft here. Like, you're not tanking for first place here next year. Like,
no, I know. I just think that Missouri at home, 11 o'clock. You just don't know how that LSU team is going to be feeling. Like, what do they have to play for at this rate? So I think that Missouri at home, they're sitting pretty at undefeated with a lot of key games to play for them. You still got to play Georgia. You still got to play Missouri still has a gauntlet coming up. So if I think that they can win in this one, they'll be a top 15 team moving into week 7. But if LSU loses this one, there's going to be a lot of question marks down there in BR.
I mean, it's just crazy to think that the games that are coming up for a Missouri team next week against Kentucky, and then back home against South Carolina, who likes to grind out some wins here and there, on the road headed to Athens for Georgia, back home against Tennessee, who's ranked again, and you got Florida, who's pesky, and on the road at Arkansas, who's no slouch as well. So a lot of big games for Missouri. Like, I think they're probably a 3 or 4 loss team at the end of the season, but to be 8-4 or 9-3 at the end of the season in an SEC East that is kind of jam packed with a bunch of teams that are now in the top 25, surprisingly, I think that surprised a lot of us, but is pretty impressive. I mean, that if they come out of that with 3 losses, props to them. Because Georgia's tough on the road. I mean, Arkansas is going to be tough on the road. And, Kentucky's going to be really hard on the road too. So it's just one of those situations where at home, they're a completely different football team and it's a completely different animal. And they look really good. I mean, I'm going to be monitoring them the rest of the season. And it's kind of the first year where I really feel like Missouri's kind of back to how they were in the 2010s and kind of in that era. So I really think that they're poised to make a decent run in the East. If Georgia slips up a game or two, they could be eyeing something that they haven't seen in a
Possibly
really
today
long
against
time.
Kentucky. Who knows?
Right. So you never know what could happen. Of course, you never know what's coming on this show, of course. And next week is week 7. We'll get into our risers and fallers for next week and get into all that fun stuff as we'll see some teams here fall, go up and down because there's some ranked matchups this weekend. And some teams have an opportunity to show that they belong in the top 25 and some show that they have no reason to be in the top 25. So we will see what happens next week. But of course, next week we'll kind of do a preview of our first kind of updated preview of our college football playoff for our top 4 teams that we're thinking about, because we don't want to do one this week. Kind of too many games going on right now this weekend for today. I just think there's too much going on and a lot can happen. And, 3 of our 4 teams possibly couldn't be in the college football playoff. So it just seems like a waste for us to do it now. So next week we'll give you guys an updated college football playoff and let you know kind of what's going on from there. So other than that, we will see you guys again next week for week 7 as we make the turning point and we come halfway across that track and we exit turn 2 and headed into turn 3 as we get to the 3/4 mark of the season. We will see you guys next Saturday. Next Saturday, of course, for our preview of week 7.